Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Britpop React with me, BP1. Today we are going to be checking out the top 10 most dangerous highways in America. Obviously, being British, we don't have highways, we have motorways, and we drive on the other side of the road, and we sit in a different seat side. So very much different from US to Britain. But yeah, I'm going to get straight into this one. The top 10 most dangerous highways. Be interesting to see. One, how big they are, and two, why they're so dangerous. And let me know if you've been on one of these highways and if you think the same. Alright, let's get into it straight away.
About America's 10 most dangerous highways.
This is brought to you by Mileage Mike. And a couple of ads.
Today, guys, we're going to be talking about America's 10 most dangerous highways. In an article that I recently came across by a website called The Zebra, they listed the top 10 most dangerous highways in America. We're going to take a look at this list, and I'll give my thoughts about the highways on the list and personal experiences while traveling on some of them. First things first, the methodology that the Zebra used to compile this list was from the National Highway and Safety Transportation Association and the Fatality Analysis Reporting System, or FARS. They broke it down by fatalities per 100 miles based on 2019 data. The article will be linked in the description if you want to check it out. At number 10 on the list is not only the most surprising, but also the only non-interstate highway on the list, US 41. US 41 is a major north-south highway
that
runs
is
from Miami, Florida to the UP of Michigan. Along the way, it passes through major cities such as Tampa, Atlanta, Nashville, Chicago, and Milwaukee.
Can't even comprehend how long that road
is. US 41 does not have a certain standard for its length. It can range from a 2-lane rural highway, such as through the Florida Everglades, to a major surface boulevard, to a quasi-freeway in Lakeshore Drive through Chicago, to an actual freeway in concurrency with interstate highways such as Interstate 41 in Wisconsin. According to the article, US 41 had 141 fatalities in 2019 and 7.02 fatalities per 100 miles.
That's a long way though, right?
US 41 can be attributed to the snow and ice on the northern end of the route and the portion through the Tampa Bay area, as Hillsborough County is known for having the highest traffic fatality rate in the entire country. Number 9 on the list is Interstate 80.
Don't go driving in Tampa.
80 is a transcontinental interstate highway that stretches all the way from the New York City area to San Francisco, California. It is the second longest interstate highway in the entire country, only behind Interstate 90. Other cities along the route include Cleveland, Chicago, Toledo, Des Moines, Iowa, Salt Lake City, Reno, and Sacramento.
You can just jump in your car
had a total of 209 fatalities in 2019 and a rate of 7.21
2,900 miles.
With the routing of Interstate 80, it's safe to say that the majority of its fatalities are concentrated in the New York, Chicago, and San Francisco metro areas. During winter months, icy weather in the Chicago, Cleveland, and New York areas can be credited with the increase in fatalities.
I mean, as a Brit, it's really difficult. I mean, we've done the size difference between the UK and, you know, just the fact that you can squeeze in the UK. If you just squashed it up into like a sponge, it would fit inside Texas. So to see that line going across, you know, west to east, right the way across America, I'm not sure my tiny brain can comprehend how long that road is, and how long. At an average, 70 miles per hour, how long that would actually take to drive that? Yeah, that is crazy, isn't it? Oh, mad. Well, you could probably work it out. 2,900 divided by 70. That's how many hours it takes, and I'm going to tell you now, that's a lot. All right, let's keep going.
Number 8 is Interstate 70. Another long, almost coast-to-coast interstate.
It's huge,
I-70 runs from I-15 or Cove Fort, Utah, to its humble ending.
It's a
parking ride just
road,
outside
isn't it?
the Baltimore city limits on the East Coast. It is the 5th longest interstate highway and runs through cities such as Denver, Topeka, Kansas,
That's not a highway, though,
Kansas
is it?
City, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. I-70 had 158 fatalities in 2019 at a rate of 7.35 per 100 miles. A famous stretch of I-70 is a section in Colorado.
7 deaths per 100
section
miles.
in Glenwood Canyon, in particular, was not completed until 1992 and goes through some of the most difficult terrain in the entire interstate highway system. It features several steep grades along with some sharp corners that aren't in line with typical interstate standards. Outside of Colorado,
Not in line with
serves as
standards.
the main east-west freeway through many of the cities it passes through, which likely increases its fatality rate due to those urban stretches in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbus, and Indianapolis. The number 7 highway is one that I'm very familiar with personally, Interstate 40. Interstate 40 is a transcontinental interstate highway stretching from Wilmington, North Carolina to Barstow, California. It passes through cities.
So you got like 3 major ones going west to east there. I guess it just depends on the height of the state, I guess. I just
along the way, such
just the
as
distance
the
is
Raleigh
crazy.
and Durham Triangle area, the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, Little Rock, Oklahoma City, Amarillo, Texas, and Albuquerque, New Mexico.
So
I actually traveled this highway in its near entirety back in the day, driving my car from
doesn't
my
say
home state of
why
North
they
Carolina
are.
to my duty station in Southern California. A famous quote from CBS journalist Charles Kuralt upon completion of I-40 in 1990 stated, "Thanks to the interstate highway system, it is now possible to travel from coast to coast without seeing anything." I can confirm those sentiments, as once you pass Memphis, this highway becomes
Well, I've frozen slightly there, so bear with me. Lost my
more
camera there,
desolate
folks.
and
Sorry
empty.
about that.
The Zebra article listed 253 fatalities for 2019, along with a rate
Okay.
of 9.89 per 100 miles. Well,
It doesn't say why though, does it? I mean, it's clear that obviously the total length, how many fatalities are on it. I didn't say why it's such a dangerous road, because ever so straight. I mean, there was a couple there, obviously, with the steep and maybe some bends that weren't standard or, approved.
I-40 doesn't go through as many large metro areas as some of the other highways. It does pass through a lot of difficult terrain, particularly through the Great Smoky Mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, where rock slides are common and can make the road treacherous or even impassable at times. I-40 is also one of the heaviest truck corridors in the U.S., and the mix of vehicles can contribute to the fatality rate. At number 6 on the
trucks
list,
are
Interstate 15,
nightmare,
a major north-south interstate highway, going from San Diego, California to the Canadian border at Sweetgrass, Montana. Along the way, I-15 passes through the Inland Empire portion of the greater Los Angeles region, Las Vegas, and Salt Lake City, Utah. I-15 had 158 total fatalities and a rate of 11.02 per 100 miles.
Okay,
Upon
so less
first glance,
fatalities.
one would notice that I-15 is much shorter than the east-west interstates on the list so far, and also only travels through a few large metro areas in comparison. The high fatality rate is likely due to the California portion of the route. I-15 travels through mountainous terrain between San Diego and the Inland Empire, experiences heavy traffic in the area, and then proceeds to a long and dangerous stretch between here and Las Vegas. North of Las Vegas, things quiet down significantly and it becomes a route less traveled. It's been a while since I drove on I-15, but that section in the Inland Empire was one that I often dreaded driving. Now we move on to the top 5. Starting it out is Interstate 35, another major north-south route ending in 5.
So these are all huge roads, aren't they? I mean, you're looking at the length of Britain times 4, 5 times. It's just crazy, 5 or 6 even in distance. So yeah,
it runs from the Mexican
you're
border
going to get a lot of deaths
to Duluth, Minnesota. Along the way, it passes through the major metros of San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth.
I mean, have you driven any of these?
Kansas City.
Do you agree?
Des Moines, Iowa, and the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. I-35 had 137 fatalities in 2019 and a rate of 12.56 fatalities per 100 miles.
Big cities though, Houston, Dallas,
big contributors to I-35 stats are that it goes through all of the largest cities in Texas outside of Houston, and carries a very heavy amount of truck traffic, being a near border-to-border interstate highway. One thing of note is that it is the only interstate that travels through Austin, a fast-growing city of over 800,000 people. So it is likely attracting a lot of drivers in that area. Next up is another interstate that I'm quite familiar with, and that is Interstate 75. I-75 covers a large amount of territory from the Miami Metro in South Florida to the Canadian border in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Along this route are the major areas of Fort Myers and Sarasota, Florida, Tampa, Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Detroit. I-75 had a total of 237 fatalities in 2019 and a rate of 13.27 per 100 miles. The Zebra attributed a large amount of those fatalities to icy winter conditions in Michigan and the portions of I-75 on the west coast of Florida. Fort Myers and Sarasota were mentioned, along with Tampa being the worst of all, with Hillsborough County, which contains Tampa, being cited as the most dangerous county in the entire country. Surprisingly, the Atlanta area wasn't mentioned along with the Florida portion. With some of the crazy driving I've seen in Atlanta, it speaks volumes to how much worse the driving must be on the Florida stretch of I-75. Now to number 3.
Busier, isn't it? You're going to get the more vehicles you got.
Highway of the West Coast Interstate.
Be great to see how one stat that's missing is on average how many cars use that state per day, because you couldn't do it any longer than that. But that would give you, if you had a long road that didn't have many cars on it and it had a lot of fatalities, you'd be like, yeah, that's a lot higher than a road that's got maybe 10 million on a day or whatever, but less fatalities. So that's one big stat that's missing, because some of them roads are not going to have that many compared to some that are traveling through the bigger cities.
State 5. Interstate 5 travels from border to border, the Mexican border in San Diego to the Canadian border in Blaine, Washington. Along the way, it passes through or near major metro areas such as San Diego, Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento, Portland, and Seattle. I-5 had 186 fatalities in 2019 and 13.47 fatalities per 100 miles. As with I-15, the majority of I-5's fatalities occur in California. The portion in San Diego County was cited as the most dangerous section, along with sections in the Los Angeles and Sacramento areas being major contributors. Being an interstate that fully runs between each international border, I-5 also carries a large amount of truck traffic, and the Zebra says this adds quite a bit to the auto fatalities.
I would imagine it's extremely busy.
At number 2, we are almost
LA.
done, and the highway in question is Interstate 20. Interstate 20 runs from I-95 in Florence, South Carolina to its western end at I-10 in West Texas. I-20 runs through Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, and the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I-20 had 208 total fatalities and 13.52 per 100 miles, just barely beating out I-5. The Zebra cited high traffic areas such as Dallas, Jackson, and Atlanta as major contributors to its fatality rate. While it might be surprising to see a smaller metro like Jackson on the list, I can confirm that the stretch of I-20 through that area is quite constrained, pothole-filled, and felt very unsafe compared to most other highways.
They're a nightmare.
So
especially if they're on a highway, I mean...
Birmingham, on the other hand, was...
I mean, there's a lot of road out there, right? You've got a lot of road compared to what we've got road. A lot more road to maintain. And I think our road's bad sometimes, but I've got to admit, the motorways are pretty good. Some areas where they're poor, but in 90% they're pretty good roads. Whereas some of the roads I've seen here looking a bit ropey.
Nosy absent, which may possibly be due to the recent widening and improvements on I-20 through that area. Who would have thought it would be safer to drive in Alabama than Texas? Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the only well-known highway left
Number
at this
one.
point.
What is it? Do you know?
Surprise, the mighty Interstate
You're guessing.
95. Coming in at number 1 on the list, I-95 travels up the U.S. East Coast
I see.
from
Yeah,
the
look at the
tropical
cities
palm
it's
trees
going
in downtown
through
Miami to the icy forests of Holton, Maine, at the Canadian border. I-95 carries more traffic than any other highway and travels through or near more populated areas than any other highway by far. After Miami, it runs through Jacksonville, Florida, Savannah, Georgia, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York City, and Boston.
Be interesting. So what's the number then? You've got 200 and something roughly.
I-95 clocked in at number 1 in both total fatalities
284. That's not bad considering.
284 fatalities and 14.88 per 100 miles.
If you're looking at some of the others, you look at the major cities there: New York, Miami, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, and the length of that road, nearly 2,000 miles. I mean, that's pretty impressive. To be fair. I thought it was going to be higher than that, judging on some of the numbers that we saw from the previous ones.
In addition to the sheer density of population that I-95 serves, The Zebra says that much of the deadliness on I-95 can be attributed to icy conditions in the northeast winters
How'd you even
and
see?
drivers on the east coast of Florida, particularly in Jacksonville and Brevard County. I noticed that I-95 in South Carolina wasn't mentioned, but perhaps that's because on that section of I-95, you'll be barely moving due to all the congestion. Personally, my last trip on I-95 in South Carolina involved sitting in stop-and-go traffic from the I-26 junction all the way to the Georgia state line. Time to step your game up, South Carolina. Alright guys, there we have it. The most dangerous highways in America. Were you?
Alright, there you go. Dangerous highways in America. Interesting ones there. One, I didn't even realise just how long the roads were for a start. But interesting to see the fatalities. I mean, number 7, 253 fatalities. Alright, it's less per 100 miles, but even still, it's not that far off number 1. Yeah, cool. Well, not cool, obviously. For anybody that's lost anybody on highways or freeways, but interesting for us in the UK to look at that, the numbers. I can't compare them actually to the UK's, which is a shame. I should have done a bit of research there, shouldn't I? Alright, interesting. Let me know in the comments what's your common freeway or highway that you'll use. Do you need to use them on a daily basis? Are you hopping on and off them quite quickly? Have you had seen any accidents and stuff that where you can contribute and say, yeah, I think he's right, or this one I think's worse? Obviously that was 2019 data, so we're 5 years on from there. So do let us know in the comments. I'll be back tomorrow with old BP2 over there. Until then, so goodbye from me.